Here we go. Well, good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. As Frans would say, I am Teresa Bennett Yates with Cloud9 Reiki and Vibrational Sound Therapy, coming from Calabash, North Carolina. I'm in the Grand Strand area of Myrtle Beach, and this is why I have my guest and beautiful friend and teacher on Frans, who are bringing a 3-day Reiki retreat to our area in April. I've talked to a lot of my folks about it, and there's a lot of folks who haven't met you yet, Frans, and I'm excited to introduce you and let people really get to know you before you get here, because this is going to be a treat for everyone involved. So without further ado, welcome, Frans. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for inviting. I'm so excited to be there.
Tell everyone where you're coming from. I'm sorry, I didn't tell everyone where you were coming from.
Well, of course, I come from a mom and a dad. No, just well, if people want to know who I am, I like humor. I like laughing. I also like practicing the system of Reiki. So I've been teaching professionally full time for about 27 years now. And I'm living in Holland, close to Amsterdam. But I travel the world teaching the system of Reiki. So in France, in England, in Germany, in Japan, in the US, you name it. That's a couple of different reasons. I love traveling. It's always been in my blood, traveling. But one of the other things is I really like teaching and I like sharing what I've learned. So, for example, in November, I was in Japan for a month, and in that month I did a 10-day practice retreat with my teacher, who is a Buddhist priest. He's a priest in Tendai, Shingon, etc. So really trying to learn where really Mikasui's teachings come from and how to embody it. So these teachings are very intense. You start at you wake up at 4 a.m. in the morning and you go to bed at midnight. And it's really full on. It's one-on-one in a very tiny little monastery. So not everybody get these chances to train with people like that. So my teacher also, Takeda Ajari, his teacher was a very, very famous teacher and priest in Japan, Sakai Daiajari, and it's a lineage of the marathon monks. So it's very difficult traditionally to actually train with these kind of people, particularly one-on-one. And also 10 days, very intense. So I've been very fortunate to do this, and therefore he doesn't really want to travel. He's 70 now, and he says, no, that's not my thing, but I teach you. And then he grants me after I practice, and he sees I'm knowing the exercise and the practice. Then he says, okay, this one you can practice now, and then you can teach it to other people. This one you cannot teach to everybody. But so he's also very strict, what I like, because sometimes we learn a practice and then we haven't really utilized it and we start to teach it already. I see this a lot in lots of modern practices. I really like for myself these ancient practices. So I also trained, for example, for 12 years with a Taoist teacher. She was born in China, raised in a Taoist family, and by the age of 3, started to practice already Taoism. So I trained with her for 12 years. Unfortunately, she passed away years ago. But so for me, doing this, and particularly one-on-one, to really delve into myself, because I think also often we know these things, maybe on a piece of paper, or we know it from reading a book, but actually having that direct experience and teaching from that, and hopefully guiding the students also to have really that direct experience of being Reiki, not that just Reiki comes from your hands, but like Mikasui, we can, for example, see the precepts behind me in Japanese. And if we look at that, do not anger, do not worry, be grateful, be true to your way and your being, and show compassion to yourself and others, that we integrate that in all we do. And also in the precepts, we see the word today, and it means today, it doesn't mean on your massage table or on your meditation cushion or on your yoga mat, but actually in everything we do. And for that, we have to practice.
Yes.
And
Yes.
for that also, these retreats we do is really submerging ourselves in these practices. So, of course, in the retreat is a little bit of talking, and we laugh, and we have a nice lunch, and maybe after the retreat we do some fun things. But in the
So let's
retreat
talk
also,
about the retreat just for a moment, just for people watching. That this is for Reiki attuned. Reiki, you do need a Reiki course to join this retreat. Is that correct?
yeah, for people who've done Reiki 1, 2, and 3, but sometimes, of course, if a person has done meditation practices, because ultimately, if we look at the system of Reiki, Mikasui really talks about your true nature, your essence, that luminosity. And if we lay that bare through practicing the system of Reiki or sound healing or yoga or Tai Chi, that essence ultimately is one and the same thing, right? That essence doesn't have the label Reiki on it, or yoga, or Taoism, or Buddhism. That essence is of one flavor. We just use these different methods to access that. So sometimes I do get people who have no knowledge about Reiki 1, 2, or 3, but are meditation practitioners who want to deepen their meditation practices and also remembering more and more their true nature. Then, of course, they're also welcome if they're
Okay.
open and willing.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, I just want to jump in and share something real quick, just from my own direct experience of being with Frans. Initially, I met Frans through my Reiki master teacher, Ifitao White. A lot of you locally know her. Um, and she invited me down to Beaufort, and that's where I met Frans originally. And didn't know what I was getting myself into. She said, "You need to come." I'm like, "I'll be there." Here, I'm here. And and I've never shared this with you either, Franz, but one of my very first teachings from you did not come like from the classroom setting necessarily. It was with our introduction, because I remember I was a little nervous. Franz had come all the way from Holland to be in Beaufort in Apato's home with a bunch of women from the South. He didn't know what he was in for. And I introduced myself, and just not knowing what to say, said, "Is Beaufort or South Carolina everything you expected it to be?" And your response was, "I had no expectations." And I was taken back. I'll be honest. I was like, "Well, okay." I just wanted to make chit chat. I wasn't thinking about the teachings. I wasn't that uh, familiar with no expectations. And I thought, well, okay. But by the end of the 3 or 4 days, I can't remember. It felt like a while because we chanted forever, and we'll get to that in a moment. But I thought, well, okay. He had no expectations. I wanted him to be desiring the hospitality from the South, or the big oak trees, or all the things that come from with the South. And when he said that, I didn't know how to respond. And I love that, because that was our first initial engagement, and that has stuck with me probably more than any of your teachings. And I've taken a lot of your online and in person, and we've been together a lot.
Yeah.
And I think about that all the time. And for me, not having any expectations at any moment on any given thing, if I came to Holland, I would have expectations of what I think is going to happen there and what I think it's going to look like. And when it doesn't meet those expectations, then I'll be worried and I'll be angry, and then I won't be grateful for, all the things that
Yes,
fall into the.
absolutely.
So, first of all, thank you for that. At first, I felt like it was an insult. Like, well, you had no expectations of the South, like, what is wrong with you? But that was profound for me, because I loved that you had no expectations, because you were really walking into a different situation than you normally do in that particular class, because of the way it was set up and who was attending. And it was in the South, in Beaufort. And if you've never been to Apateo's home, you need to do that. Um, it was beautiful. And thank you for that. And then later, during that first class with you, we chanted. And I think I've said this before. I felt like we chanted the whole 3 or 4 days. And I was like, what are we doing? And why did I sign up for this? And I'm going home now. I'm being honest, because these were not teachings that I learned in my Reiki training here in the US. They just are not taught.
Yeah.
And by the time I left there, I was transformed through the chanting because I am a sound healer. And it kicked my butt. And I called Afateo later and I said, what is happening to me? I felt like I was literally dying.
Yeah.
And she said, honey, that is just your ego that is dying. You are dying. She said, you
Yeah.
are dying, but that's your ego dying. And I have incorporated these practices that you have brought, that you've learned from your teachings in Japan myself, and I live them the best of my ability, and I'm incorporating them daily. And the transformation I've seen in myself and in my Reiki practice and in my students and just in my daily life has been profound,
Yeah.
just from these teachings that we don't get here in the US necessarily from Reiki training. And I love that. And I love that you go back to Japan and you still train, and that you haven't arrived yet, and that you're still learning, and you're bringing these teachings back to us so that we can teach our students. And I'm grateful. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I remember I was sitting in the car in Ifatayo, and she was driving me to her place. I had no clue where I really was. And then we go like, oh, this is quite interesting, an interesting place. And I actually like to, again, sometimes when I say this to people, also, if we go to a new restaurant or I do something, and then people go like, well, I like, but it's that for me is like, uh, in a way is like the wonder of life. Huh? Often we have so many expectations that we actually limit ourselves a lot. And when we step into life, this morning I had a coffee somewhere and there was another guy sitting there and he said, oh, what are you going to do today? I said, I'm not really sure. I've got an interview, and between that, I'm just like roll along a little bit. This is my life. So then I rolled a little bit, I walked a little bit, and then I thought maybe I should do some exercise and maybe do a little bit of preparation for another online event I'm hosting. And I feel my life is a little bit like this. But when we have no expectation, as you say, then also if the tea is not really what we think it should be, or the restaurant or the movie or whatever, then we can still enjoy it. And then we don't get that anger or worry or fear or anxiety. And therefore our life actually is so much more wonderful. It's the same with Myrtle Beach. I have to laugh because quite a few people, they say, oh, you're going to Myrtle Beach? Have you been there before? I said, no, no. Do you know what to expect? I said, no, no. Oh, you'll be in for a treat. So I haven't looked up anything yet, but I wonder why they say it. I don't know. I don't really care either. But this is the same. I think it's so exciting that in a lot of these old teachings, they say, be like a kid, because we talk about maybe Buddhist teachings. And they say, be like a little kid who walks into a monastery. The little kid has no expectations and yet can walk around in wonder, looking at the colors or the instruments or whatever is taking place. Also, without actually saying this is good and bad, is just in natural wonder. And I think this is what we forget these days in daily life. We forget the wonder of daily life. And for me, actually, therefore, the system of Reiki is really about re-educating ourselves to be that playful person again as a little kid, with different knowledge now, of course, but still being that playful and with wonderment in our daily life. And daily life is so wonderful. I live in front of a park and it's been raining lately, and I look on the park and there's some bit flooded. And so the other day I wake up and it's even flooded more. And I go, wow, this is wonderful. And I go down and I take some photos of the reflection. And I'm there for about an hour, enjoying the wonder of this flooded piece of land and how the trees reflect. And I'm kind of frolicking about with my camera and in the puddles. And I see people looking. I don't really care. but it makes you feel so good within yourself instead of like, oh, but the bike path is flooded and I can't go through it, or now I'm getting wet, or what a
And
mess.
you are a beautiful example of truly living that, because the times that we've had together, and we were in New York in April, and of course I thought I had embodied no expectations, but I was so looking forward to our next time together that I had expectations, because I couldn't wait to chant after I hated chanting in the beginning. Then I'm
Yeah.
like, I can't wait to get here and chant. And then I felt like we didn't do quite as much chanting. And I'm like, wow, but again, this is just that experience of, I thought I had no expectations, but I did have expectations going in.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we chanted more or less. It just felt that way because I was different in the beginning. It was new, and it was transformative. And then I wanted to do more of that. But then we did other practices in April in New York, where that was just as transformative. And I'm still integrating all that here, several months later, almost a year later, into my practice of everything that happened there. And
Yeah.
it's one of those things I could say, we did this at Frans's class or retreat, but until you have that direct experience, you can't explain it.
You can't explain it. It's the same if I just had a friend, he sent me some homemade chocolate bonbons from Germany. So I'm eating them and I go like, wow, I'm not sure how and what's he may put in it. I can't explain it. They were super delicious. I don't know. I can say chocolate, but it wasn't really chocolate because there was all these different layers in it. So, but until we taste it, and I think this for me is one of the essential elements of the system of Reiki, that we taste it, that we taste really what Mikasui was trying to point out through these ancient practices, what are still being practiced in Japan. If you look, you can really find them, and through this direct experience. And then we cannot even express it. The way we can express it, ultimately, Mikasui, I think, was very clever. And the way we express it is actually through the precepts that we show it through no anger, no worry, being grateful, being in the present moment, really showing that compassion and kindness to ourselves and others. That is how we express it, but we cannot even verbalize it. And because it's, as soon as we verbalize our experience in a way, we know already, if we have that really direct experience, we know the words we use is not enough. It doesn't do it. And that for me is so important when we do the retreats or the Shimpoden Reiki 3 classes or Reiki 1 or Reiki 2 or online events, that we really get that direct experience. And yeah, when I go to my teacher, I mean, that is exactly what we do. We sit, I was there for 10 days. The first 3 hours, we wake up at 4, then we do getting ourselves ready. Then from 5 to 8, we do 3 hours non-stop chanting. And his chanting is like, and
Yes.
you die like,
Yes.
so yeah, it's quite interesting. And
I'm actually diving in as
oh, nice.
into this, but one of your teachings that that you mentioned in your 11-day that I just took with you, that you just brought back, your new teachings that you did right before the holidays. Because I had a student come to me recently, and she said, I just don't have, I'm not, I don't have it. She took Reiki 1 with, I don't have it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, are you practicing? Are you practicing your precepts? Are you embodying are you doing these things in order to have it?
Yeah.
That you don't do it, you are it. And my quest was to try to explain, you need a direct experience. You need your own direct experiences in order to, I don't want to say have it. We all have it. It's a matter of understanding that we have it and how to access it, which you do so beautifully teaching. But this is what I said to her, because you passed this on during that 11-day, and you may not remember it, but you probably do. Was you said if you went to a doctor, if you weren't feeling well and you had an illness and they prescribed 2 pills in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, and 2 in the evening, you would not question it. The doctor gave you that prescription. He says, take this, you'll be better. You go home and you do that. You follow that regimen until you're better. And if you skip a morning or afternoon dosage and you're not feeling so great, then you go like, well, I didn't take my dosage. Of course I'm not feeling great.
Yeah.
So I said to her pretty much what you said to us, just in my own Southern words, that um, are you on your butt meditating? Are you doing it morning, noon, and night? And if
Yeah.
not, then you're not going to get better. Yeah, you're not going to get better. And I say this from my own direct experience, because after taking your first Shippenden class, which was my third Reiki 3 class, but that was just so much more knowledge that I had not had, or maybe wasn't ready to receive yet. I started a practice of my chanting and my sitting on my butt, taking my prescription morning, noon, and night, until I really started to embody that.
Yeah.
And then, then all of a sudden you embody it, and then you might miss a day, because you don't have to do it quite as much. Like working out, you don't have to lift weights every single day to stay the same strength, but you still have to do it. And
Absolutely.
there was a little moment or time where, I kind of got out of the practice because I felt like I was good. And I had people close to me that know me well would say, are you chanting in the mornings? Are you missing your dosage that
Yeah.
was prescribed to you? And the fact that the people closest to me noticed that is just a testament of how powerful this practice truly is.
Absolutely. And I think this is the beauty in a way, not always easy, this reflection of the people we meet in our daily life who can give us actually feedback. Are we angry? Are we worried? Do we get depressed? Do we feel anxious? Are we grateful or not from the present moment? Are we actually constantly in the past or constantly projecting to the future? Or are we right here being compassionate and kind to ourselves? All of those elements we can see. Sometimes really difficult to look honestly in the mirror for ourselves. But if we look around, then other people can and will probably also give this feedback, and then we can go through it. Is this through feedback, or is this their projection, etc.? And this is also how we can learn. I always say, if people come and do, for example, my Reiki 3 classes, and they say, Frans, how do I advertise? I said, you are your business card. Your business card is not a piece of paper. It's you. How do you behave in your daily life? Because this is where your clients are. Do your clients see who you talk to in your apartment building or in the block where you live? Do they see that you help them if something happens? Do they see that you say, good morning, can I do something for you? Or whatever, that there is a certain vibration of this kindness and love and compassion emanating from you, rippling out into the world. Then people will come and say, hey, what are you actually doing? You
Right.
always look happy and content. There is some kind of calmness and yet playfulness. You look very centered and grounded. I want what you have,
And I
right?
think that's very important, because I know through my teachings here in the United States, and a lot of the fellow Reiki people that I know in the area, we're not taught necessarily. I'm not saying always,
No,
but I'm again speaking from personal experience and experience of people around me, the importance and the foundation of the precepts. It's just kind of like, these are nice, put them on your mirror and repeat them 3 times a day. You're not taught to embody them, and you're not taught that that is the foundation really of
absolutely.
the system of Reiki, where we think, somebody says, I don't feel anything. Well, are you worried? Are you angry? Are you ungrateful?
Yeah.
And then they go, what? And I'm like, you've got to embody the precepts before, anything, truly transforms. And nobody is taught that. And I love that you're teaching the foundation, and that we're teaching the foundation, because for me, there's really, if you don't embody that, it's hard to embody anything else.
I see this a lot. I get a lot of questions from people. Oh, I do hands-on healing on people, and I'm picking this up, or that happens. I'm really worried. And I go, what about the precepts? Do not worry.
Mm.
What? And I go, haven't you? So, this is a guideline. The precepts are a guideline for not just hands-on healing on ourselves and others, but for daily life. And as we all know, shit happens daily life. We cannot control that, but we can control if we're worried about it or not worried about it. And we also know that if I'm worried all day, that at the end of the day, I feel really tired. If I'm angry all day, I feel really tired. So the precepts are also, how can I preserve my energy so that I can be a better vehicle for helping other people? Because if I'm tired, I'm not going to do hands-on healing. I'm not going to be kind to people. I'm not going to go out there and help others. Impossible. So yeah, therefore, as you say, they are the essence of the system of Reiki, and most of the time they are skipped over really briefly. And we also know, I would say this too, because if it was that easy that we say them 3 times, I said, well, let's print them out and give them, say, to the people here in Amsterdam, and they read them all 3 times. And within a month, everybody Amsterdam is the most compassionate city in the world. But we all know it's not that easy, right? It's not that easy. Um,
And I
and
think
it's
again, it's going back to if people are not Reiki or practice Reiki and they end a meditation, it brings you back to the present moment. Because
absolutely.
even if you're just meditating and not necessarily practicing the system of Reiki, if you're not worried and you're not angry, you're in the present moment.
Absolutely. I mean, this is one of the things I remember when I first started to learn the system of Reiki. And then I lived in India, I lived in the Himalaya. And I met this young Tulku, who is a Tibetan reincarnated Lama. And he was 21. And so we were chatting, and he lived in the same, for a while, in the same guest house. It was only like 5 little rooms, beautiful, on a mountaintop in Darjeeling, absolutely stunning. So then one day he said, so Frans, what is Reiki? I didn't know anything. I still don't know anything. But I said, well, hands-on healing on yourself or on other people. And he goes, oh, like this. And he sticks his hand out. Holy guacamole. The space, what that triggered in me, the energy, not just from his hand, from his whole being. I go, something like that. And I walked away and I go like, shit, I want what he has. And then I found out that he just came out of a cave, 3 years in a cave with his teacher meditating. No wonder what came out of his hands and his whole being was a very different ball game that when we just receive an attunement and we don't really do anything and we say, now we practice hands-on healing, very, very different, very
Well, I
different.
think so many people think that it comes physically because they feel the heat, or some people feel the heat.
Yeah,
They feel different things, and they want it physically. But what I think what the teaching's missing is it comes from within. It comes from a
yeah,
spiritual place. Even though Reiki's not necessarily a religion, it is a spiritual practice.
absolutely.
And if you're not practicing the spiritual practice of Reiki, are you practicing Reiki?
Well, I mean, this is even Mr. Takada in the early 1930s. He writes in a diary that Reiki comes from within and it lies at the bottom of our stomach, and that we have to meditate. This is completely almost disappeared for a long time. Usui Reiki Gakai says exactly the same thing, that it comes from your own being, from your own body, and it's not hanging out somewhere there. It's not something. There is a ball like a moon, and there's a Reiki energy hanging. And but if we really understand it, if we practice and we really feel this within ourselves, then it also becomes easier to teach. It becomes easier to do hands-on healing. Life becomes easier, because for me, actually, if we do hands-on healing on ourselves and others correctly, and this is why I use a little bit of emphasis on correctly, then that will have a ramification into your daily life. If it doesn't have a ramification in your daily life, then we might not do it correctly. And So, for example, again, if we look at the precepts, if I'm worried during a treatment, then I'm planting worry. Then the next day, don't think that you're going to be all happy and content because you've been planting worry for 1, 2, 3 hours while you do hands-on healing on different kind of people. So it's really important that we investigate that. So if for say I do 3 treatments a day and I feel I need to protect myself, then you're planting that in yourself. And then when you go out, you constantly feel, oh, I need to protect myself. Oh, the world is evil. Everything is. And then suddenly you feel, I'm not that playful anymore in life. I feel really constricted. Well, because every day for 3 hours long, if you do 3 treatments a day, or if you work on yourself and you have the intention for protection, you're actually emphasizing worry, fear, anger, etc. So really essential that we understand these elements of actually what Mikosu was trying to teach us.
And I love that you brought up playfulness again, because we've talked about all these serious practices of meditating and really diving deep and going within, which takes a lot of discipline and serious effort. It's not a fly by your seat of your pants type thing. It is a practice, and you are only as good as your practice. And but I love that you brought up the playfulness and the laughter, because ultimately we're talking about the retreat that's coming up. And if you want to have a good time, and if you just want to laugh, and you just want to have a good time in Myrtle Beach, come to this retreat, because Franz is a hoot, y'all. He is always laughing, cutting up. He has us going, and laughter is the best medicine, and laughter does heal. And yeah, we had such a great time in last April in New York, and I'm looking forward to our time in April in Myrtle Beach. Our beautiful friend Brenda Williamson, I want to shout out to her, is organizing this event. And she's in physical therapy right now, and we'll send her lots of love and Reiki for her shoulder. But I'm grateful for Brenda for hosting and for organizing this, because it's a big thing to take on. And it is going to be April 19th through the 21st at the Hampton Inn. I'm gonna make sure I get this right, at Broadway at the beach in Myrtle Beach. And if you need information, if you're from out of town and you need a place to stay, there's rooms there. If you don't want to stay there, you can contact me and I'll get you in touch with Brenda, because she's got all the places and all the things that's going on. So don't hesitate to reach out in the comments if you need more information for that. Do you want to say anything about you coming to Myrtle Beach before we?
Yeah, I'm really, well, I should say we laugh a lot. I like laughter. And I think also when we laugh, we have that belly laugh. So already, we're focusing on deeper breathing and on being centered. Often we breathe up here. We can't really laugh that well, but when we do this big belly laugh. So laughter for me, I think is really important. And I see the same with my teacher. He's very, very serious. And then he's funny. And then he even in last time, he was crying a few times because he felt so much, love and emotions and feelings, what came free for him, what was beautiful. So for me, all of that is wonderful. And I'm really looking forward to come to the retreat. And as you say, Brenda is a great host and organizer, and yourself to promote it and to be together near the beach. I think it will be very, very exciting. For 3 days, we submerge ourselves, and then in the evening, we can walk on the boardwalk, down by the sea.
Frans loves karaoke and dancing, and we're at Broadway at the beach, and that's got a whole host of nightclubs. So I'm sure we'll be hitting a
Oh,
few of
my.
those afterwards, because you can just walk from one to the other. So bring your dancing shoes for that, because Frans likes to have a good time, and as we all do. But he brings so much, just a level of joy and laughter that a lot of us are not used to in our daily life. And I'm so looking forward to hosting you in my hometown, Frans, and having you here. Yeah, so I guess with that, we'll just drop information in the comments about the retreat and more, anything that you need to know that you don't know. Frans has a ton of Reiki books you want to check out. He's got a new one, The Way of Reiki. Do you want to talk about that real quick?
Yeah, so my latest book, The Way of Reiki, The Inner Teachings of Mikasu, is really again an accumulation. Each time I say this with a new book, but each time I go deeper in my practice, I learn new things, I got gain new insights. Again, it never stops, right? So yes, that is out. It's doing really, really well. It's actually, it comes out tomorrow in French, what is great. It's coming out in March in Dutch. So yeah, it's really quite exciting to see that spreading through the world. So very excited.
Okay. Well, we will see you in April. I hope I'll see you before that, but I'll see you in April in my hometown. And yeah, so thanks for coming on. I've been dying for my students and my Reiki people to meet you, so they have a little taste
For inviting.
of the person I speak of often. But we love you, and we'll see you in April.
Love you too.
All
Thank
right. See
you.
you soon. Bye.